Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in from around the world today for another exciting broadcast with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. We've got a lot of new folks in the crowd today, so if you are new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you are joining us on such a special day if you're new to us, because we are continuing our epic series in conjunction with the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society. Just 2 days ago, we got the chance to hang out with Sean Wolf, an amazing underwater filmmaker. That program is on our YouTube channel to kick off this awesome series in conjunction with OWUSS. I'm getting so excited that I'm getting ahead of myself here. Our OWUSS series is in partnership with the amazing folks, too, at the Story Collider, who are doing a live in-person event in June, and it's made possible by Rolex's Perpetual Planet Initiative. And I challenge you to say that 5 times fast. It is very tricky. OWUSS is all about providing young, amazing ocean scientists, conservationists, storytellers, amazing opportunities for a year to sort of shadow and work with some of the best ocean organizations on the planet. So for 50 years, they've been doing this, and really their alumni represent the creme de la creme of ocean storytellers on planet Earth. So we are so privileged here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants to get to feature some of these awesome stories, and I hope you're as excited as I am. All the remaining programs are on our webpage, so you can check out ones on May 1st, 15th, and 29th as well. Now, before I dive in with today's epic speaker and topic, I want to highlight that we will have a Kahoot today. So if you want to join us in a little 4-question quiz between our talk and our Q&A, you can pull up that game pin and do just that in about 25-30 minutes or so. Should be an extra way to keep it engaging and fun. Now today, 3rd time's the charm. I'm so thrilled to welcome in Arzucan Askin. She is, I could give you a whole bunch of superlatives about her. I could tell you a lot about her amazing career, but I'll leave you with this. Her work in her early career has taken her all around the world in pursuit of some of the most iconic ocean stories on planet Earth. And she's so good at it that she's been lauded by pretty much every major organization in the world. So if that's not a good backdrop for someone here today to tell you about sharks around the world, I don't know what is. It's such a pleasure to have you. Finally, Arzucan, it's so nice to get underway with this. Welcome to the broadcast, and thanks for joining us. This is marvelous.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, 3rd time definitely is a charm. I apologize for anyone who's signed on earlier and had to wait for me to figure out my internet issues. Today we did it, so here we are.
We did it, and it's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. So I know you've got a lot to share. I will cue it up, and we are good to dive in. Let's do this thing.
Ooh, brilliant. Well, hello, everyone. Great to meet you over the internet. My name is Arzucan Askin. Most people know me as Zuzu or Arzu, and I'm an interdisciplinary conservation scientist. So, Jesse, I'm going to do a little finger whenever it's time to swap the slides, because Jesse's in charge of my slide deck today. So let's hop on to the next slide. So yeah, a little bit about me before we dive into sharks. So I'm a marine conservation scientist. I'm also a technical diver and sailor in training. Looking forward to more sailing adventures to come over the next years. In between my work, I also am a National Geographic Explorer, and I was one of the European Rolex Scholars for the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society in 2021. So at the moment, how I like to describe myself is as an early career researcher specializing in studying and documenting all the exciting and sometimes heartbreaking challenges our oceans face where they meet our human society. So that means lots of exciting topics like human-animal relationships, but also pollution, extinction of certain species, wildlife trafficking, and the preservation of underwater cultural heritage. And over the last years, a lot of my work has focused on sharks, so that's what I'll be talking about today with you. Next slide. So I'm an interdisciplinary conservation scientist. What does that actually mean? That means, next slide, sorry about this. Interdisciplinary means that I work using a combination of multiple academic disciplines. So in my case, that's a nice little mix between biology, anthropology, blue economics, and what we like to call political ecology, which is looking at the intersection between the environment and human societies and human political structures. Conservation, so that means that most of my work looks at caring and protection for wildlife and at ecosystems. And scientists, you already all know what a scientist is, but it's a person who researches to advance our knowledge in a specific area. So in my case, I'm doing research to advance our knowledge about the oceans and specifically conservation issues underwater. So currently my focus is on sharks, but not in the way most people expect. So I'm really interested in researching and focusing on the areas where humans and sharks meet. So that's everything from shark finning, which is on the left, as most people already know this issue, but also other things like the use of shark-derived materials for human consumption. So things like cosmetics. Most people don't know that a lot of cosmetics actually have shark-derived ingredients, as does a lot of pet food, and it's sort of an invisible conservation issue at times. Something else I'm really interested in looking at is shark tourism. So the way different countries and different locations do shark tourism differently and what that means for the way we relate to and connect with these animals. And then the fourth column of my work is looking at human impacts on sharks. So on the right side, you see an entangled whale shark captured by an Australian photographer in the Maldives on one of the islands that I've also had the privilege to work in. So that being said, just waiting for the slide to load. One area I'm most passionate about is to better understand what drives shark protection in some places, like, for example, the Maldives, where you see a local dive center owner freediving with a shark. They do this every day. For them, it's normal. Versus the exploitation or targeted killing of sharks in other places around the world. So in the Indian Ocean, we have a lot of shark finning and shark fishing. But in countries like Australia, for example, we have a lot of shark nets. So these are nets set up to protect beachgoers from sharks because sharks are perceived as a danger. So you see a really big contrast here between Australia on the right, for example, where sharks are feared and beachgoers are protected from sharks using shark nets, or protected in exclamation marks here, versus the Maldives, where sharks freely roam and no one is fearing them at the same level that we might be doing in Australia. So I'm really interested in looking at these different ways, different countries, different cultures, and different people relate to sharks and what that means for how they treat these animals as well. So yeah, my favorite research and exploration tools. Let's get right into it. Obviously, one of my absolute favorite and main tools for research is diving. During my OWUSS scholarship year, I had the opportunity to start my journey as a technical diver using closed circuit rebreathers on the top right. Still very much in training, got a lot of hour building ahead of me, but it's absolutely one of the most amazing tools that I've been able to use so far for research and for diving. On the left, you see me tech diving. Tech diving is also a great tool for long research periods underwater if you want to extend your time below the surface. But I also do free dive quite frequently to do some megafauna surveys for some of my work as well. So that means not using any tanks at all and just holding my breath and diving down to study wildlife. Another favorite research tool of mine, and it's one I haven't yet used for sharks, but have for whales, is sailing. I actually currently have one of my best friends visiting me. He's a skipper and sailor who runs an amazing organization called Sail Britain. That's how I started my sailing journey. And as part of my scholarship year, I also had the opportunity to work with Barba Norway, championed by Captain Andreas V. Heide, which you've probably seen on the series as well, to sail up all the way into the high Arctic beyond 80 degrees north to look for blue whales. This year, I hope to bring sailing into some of my shark work as well, so I will send some updates to Jessie once that happens. So what is a shark? Sharks are amazing animals. So first of all, sharks are fish, but they are a very special kind of fish. They are fish that are cartilaginous. I can't ever say this word in English. I can say it in German. So that means their bodies are made up of cartilage, not bone. So very similar to what you have in your earlobes. The second most exciting thing about sharks is that they're incredibly diverse. There's over hundreds of species of sharks. Let's hop to the next slide, Jessie, here. Oh, I don't know if it's not loaded. Yeah, there's over 400 species of sharks around the world, and they all look a little bit different. And the most exciting thing, which I always like to highlight in my work, is that sharks are very old, so to say. So our earliest fossils of sharks date to 4.5 million years ago, and got a little typo there. And our earliest records of trees are around 2.8 million years ago. So that means in many ways, sharks are sort of older than trees. And when I dive and work with sharks, I like to say to people that it's a little bit like living in a modern Jurassic Park, because at the end of the day, we get to work with animals that have changed very little over the course of evolution. And it's always an incredible privilege to be in the presence of such an amazing, amazing creature. Next slide. Yeah, so when most people think of sharks, they think of this. They think of a great white. That's the most sort of popular connotation to sharks that we have. But sharks come in all shapes and sizes, and they can sometimes also look like this, which is a leopard shark, completely different to a great white shark, but it's also a shark. Absolutely incredible animals. And they can also look like this. So what's going to come up now is, it hasn't loaded. Now I see what Jesse meant. This is a California horn shark.
And we're going to get this picture for you at the end of the broadcast. I know it doesn't want to work in the slide deck right now, but we promise you'll get a California horn shark. I'll find this for the end. Perfect.
Yes, please. They are also super, super cute, and they look very different from what one might expect a shark to look like. So yeah, sharks come in all different shapes and sizes. They can be up to 18 meters long, like the whale shark, which you see there. It's the first species of shark that I got to actively work with and study. And they can also be really, really tiny, like the dwarf lantern shark that fits into the palm of your hand and is around 20 centimeters long. But most of the shark species we think of when we say shark is sort of things like the oceanic white-tip shark or like great white sharks that, range between 2 to 4 meters in adult length. So why are sharks important? Some of you in the room might already know this. It's one of the most known facts about sharks, but sharks are apex predators. So that means they're at the top of the food chain. That means they regulate the ecosystem. So think of them a little bit like the cleanup crew of the ocean. They're in charge of eating all the dead things, all the decaying things that would otherwise be burdening the ecosystems. They regulate the ecosystem functions. So that's the ecological side of sharks. But on the other hand, sharks are also increasingly important for local livelihoods and for millions of people around the world, because they are at the core of global shark tourism industries, and certainly they are worth a lot more alive than they are dead as fished sharks for their fins. And they take a key role, not just in all marine ecosystems, but also very specifically in coral reefs, as they regulate the species along the food chain. So if sharks disappear, what you get are heavily degraded coral reefs, because a lot of algae grows on them, because it just upsets the balance of fish and marine life in the ecosystem. So this is something we have a lot in the Mediterranean, where all the big predators and big fish as well, not just sharks, but other big fish, are removed from the food chain due to excessive fishing. And our coral reefs have pretty much mostly died off due to excessive algae growth, because the big fish eat the small fish, and that regulates the algae. And if there's no big fish eating the small fish, the entire ecosystem just gets upset. That's a very simple way to put it. I hope it makes sense in a school context. But yeah, so how did I get to work with sharks? That's always the question I get asked the most. Let's jump right into it, because my pathway into working with sharks is very different. So my curiosity for sharks all started in Turkey when I saw a big 6-gill pulled up. I don't have a picture of that day. I was 12 or 13 years old, if I remember correctly. And there was a big 6-gill shark that was caught and hauled up to land in my near village. And I thought it looked incredibly beautiful. This is a picture of a 6-gill shark from a few years ago. And I thought it looked incredibly alien-like. And the young researcher in me was incredibly fascinated. And I started to research, what was this giant thing that they had pulled up from the deep? Why does it look like this? And it's so big. And that's where my curiosity started. And that's also when I started to learn about how threatened sharks are, especially in the Mediterranean. And it kickstarted my journey into wanting to work for sharks and with sharks. I come from Turkey. It's a country in the Mediterranean. And the Mediterranean used to be home to lots of really large sharks. So on the left, you see a large female short-fin mako shark. It's supposedly the biggest specimen of its kind ever caught in the world. And then on the right side, you see a great white shark caught in Turkey. These are all photos from the 1920s to 1950s. Since then, there hasn't been any big sharks caught in our waters, and they've pretty much gone locally extinct. And that really made me really sad. So when I was a teenager and I realized that we fished out and taken out all of these incredible animals that once used to roam our waters, I decided that I wanted to become a conservationist and contribute to the protection of the ocean, so that other places around the world wouldn't be losing their sharks and their big wildlife in the same way that we did. So that's where it all started. Next slide. But my journey started on land. So I ended up going to Hong Kong on a scholarship, which is where I first came in touch with the shark finning markets and got a better understanding of how complex shark conservation actually is, because sharks are heavily fished in most parts of the world for their fins and meat. And I realized that day that maybe I should take a career and take a degree that's not in biology, but that looks a little more at people and economics and sort of the structures around shark fishing and shark extinction. So I went to London and I actually studied environmental management, political science, and human geography, but specializing always in oceans and in shark-related issues and topics. Then I did my master's in conservation science in Oxford. And then I spent a lot of time working with the World Bank on the West Africa Coastal Area Management Program, looking at coastal fisheries and extinct and endangered species in Western African countries. Before I then got my Rolex scholarship from the and took a little bit of a new direction. So next slide. Ooh, is it loading? Yeah, so what I did in my degree was not to look at sharks through the lens of marine biology, so biologically, but I looked at sharks and shark conservation through the social, economical, political, and cultural lens as well. So anything from tourism to shark finning to shark fishing, also cool little intersections like how sharks have inspired human design and airplanes and other parts of our life and our world. Next one. So yeah, my master's thesis focused on looking at whale sharks. So I took a social ecological systems approach to whale sharks. So that means looking at both the social and ecological side. Most of my work there focused on looking at how shark tourism and shark conservation intersect, and also looking at the injuries a lot of the whale sharks sustain from unsustainable tourism practices. A little bit of a sad picture, but one that highlights the plight of sharks very well on the next slide. Yeah, so a lot of the whale sharks in the South Ari marine protected area in the Maldives sustain injuries from unsustainable tourism. So that was that image. And then, yeah, I embarked on one of the most exciting times of my entire life to date, which was my year as the 2021 European Rolex Scholar of the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society. And as part of this year, I had the opportunity to work with incredible shark researchers, shark behavioral experts, shark divers, shark tourism operators around the world. So here you see me with Christina Zanato in the Bahamas with her Shiver of Grey Reef Sharks, which was an absolutely incredible experience. It was also my first time diving in a chainmail suit, and I felt a little bit like an underwater knight. Next slide. And yeah, as part of that year, I also took a bit of a challenge to myself to have sort of what I like to call a comparative approach to human-shark interaction tourism around the world. So comparing how different locations around the world do shark tourism and do shark conservation. So the countries I focused on during my scholarship year were the Bahamas, Egypt, and the Maldives, each of which have a very different relationship with sharks and a very different way of doing shark tourism, which was very, very insightful to experience and to study as an observer. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, so in the Maldives, I got to spend a lot of time with the tiger sharks. There's an island in the deep south of the Maldives called Fumla, where I got to spend a lot of time diving with tiger sharks, learning more about how this island specifically has built its shark tourism industry, and also how sharks are protected and in many ways highly respected and loved. The sharks there have basically transformed the entire island, created new jobs, and created an entire different economy and social ecosystem built around these amazing animals. And I don't know if the next video is going to load, but there's a great video. So this is the entrance of the harbor of Fumla. All the shadows you see there, those are all tiger sharks. So this island is renowned for having an incredibly large population of tiger sharks, which all frequent the area close to the harbor and close to the island's shores. And it's not uncommon in the beautiful blue water that you see there on the side in the shallow patches to see fathers bathing with their children next to, a dozen tiger sharks, which wouldn't happen anywhere else in the world. So yeah, as during that year, I became part of an organization called the Miaru Program, which is a local NGO dedicated to researching the local shark populations of the Maldives. So they focus not just on tiger sharks, we focus primarily on most of the shark species, actually. A lot of our work recently has shifted away from tiger sharks to look more at other species, such as silver-tip sharks or great hammerhead sharks that we'd love to look into over the next months as well. And we're a small NGO. You'll see our team in the next slide. Most of us are super young, passionate conservationists. Most of us are shark divers, local divers from the Maldives, that have grown up with an incredible love of sharks. And as part of my role, really what I'm doing the most at the moment is learning from the Maldives and the Maldivian island communities about their model of human coexistence with sharks and their model of shark protection, because I think the world has a lot to learn from the Maldives, because there's nowhere else where you'll see this many sharks peacefully coexisting next to people. As part of our work, so why I do work with sharks, and I'm running a little bit behind on time, so I'll be super quick. I've already touched on the conservation issues, so we'll zip through the next slides. One of the main reasons I work with sharks is because we have lost most of our global shark populations. We've lost 70% of the oceanic shark population since the 1970s, which is really scary when you think about the fact that sharks have been around for millions of years, and we've managed to wipe out so many of them very recently. Next slide. A third of global sharks are now threatened by extinction. So that means that maybe my children won't be able to see some of the species that I've had the privilege to dive and work with over the last years. Next slide. And then coming from the Mediterranean, half of our shark species are now threatened by extinction, either globally or locally, which is a very, very scary fact. And for me, it's a very motivating fact for my work, because it reminds me that everything I do will hopefully, I try as hard as I can to contribute to the protection of these species for future generations. And yeah, the Indian Ocean is the epicenter of global shark decline, so we're losing sharks there faster than anywhere else. And then in the middle of the Indian Ocean is the Maldives, which is the second shark sanctuary in the world. And that's already answered some of my next slides. So where do I work on sharks currently? So currently I work in the Mediterranean, because sharks here are facing an extreme risk of extinction within the Med, and some of the species beyond as the Med as well. And then the other reason I work in the Maldives is because the Maldives is the direct opposite of the Mediterranean. So as a national shark sanctuary, sharks are protected from fishing, and they're incredibly abundant. So I'm hoping to apply some of the Maldives and the Mediterranean to support shark conservation there. And vice versa, as a person hailing from the Mediterranean, I have an incredible overview of what happens when you don't protect sharks, so in comparison to the Maldives. So the Maldives has a lot of amazing shark species. You've already seen the tiger sharks. They've got guitar sharks, which are actually raised. They're also called wedgefish. Hammerhead sharks, pelagic thresher sharks, gray reef sharks, one of the largest aggregations of gray reef sharks in the world, which a close friend of mine is currently also studying. And then the Med has a bunch of other shark species, which are incredibly beautiful and special as well, on the next slide. Yeah, so we've got blue sharks, sandbar sharks, which are super, super cute and very fun. Mako sharks as well. And then not typically shark-looking shark, which is the angel shark on the bottom right. So yeah, what does a day as a shark researcher look like before we jump into questions? No day looks the same. So some of my days look like this, where I'm in the water or on the water, working very closely with the sharks, like doing photogrammetry, which I got to do with Christina Zanato in the Bahamas, doing observational surveys of sharks. Here you see our team in training to learn shark research methods with the tiger sharks, because they're a very accessible species. We didn't actually do a study on the tigers, we just used the tigers to train our team. Some of my days are on land doing community outreach and education. So in the Maldives and in Turkey and also other countries across the Med, I'm currently working on a few education projects to help share the excitement and passion for sharks with the next generation. And then some days are extra special, which I hope we get to. Oh yeah, some days are around raising awareness. So things like bycatch, accidental fishing of sharks, injuries of sharks, and mortality of sharks. So sharks are actually really sensitive animals. A lot of them, if you catch them as a sports fisherman and then release them, a lot of them still won't be able to survive due to the stress and will succumb to their stress or injuries later. So we're trying to raise awareness around how sensitive sharks actually are and how fishing and fisheries interactions can harm them or injure them. On the right, you see a very famous shark from the Maldives named Pirate, who sustained an eye injury due to a fishhook. And she's been around one of the islands for many, many years. I have met divers who've met her 10 years ago and still see her to this day. So it's also incredible to see how resilient these animals can be. A lot of my work is on my computer doing data analysis. So when you work with sharks, you spend some time in the water and a lot more time on your computer working with data. So we're not in the water every day. Quite a lot of time we're on our computers. But it's a very rewarding part of our scientific work. And currently we're working on publishing some papers, hopefully soon. And then some days, like I said, are extra special. So here you see me diving down next to a deep sea drop camera engineered by the National Geographic Exploration Technology Lab. I think this was one of the best days of my research experience and career so far. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the cameras. I can't tell you too much because the project is still ongoing. But let's jump to the next slide. So last year, we ran our first field season of our deep sea shark project with the MERO program using autonomous deep ocean lander systems, which is a fancy way of saying deep sea cameras. So these camera systems were engineered by the Nat Geo Exploration Technology Lab, and we had the incredible opportunity to deploy them together with the lab's deep sea chief scientist, Dr. Jonathan Giddens, who taught our team how to use these cameras to observe deep sea biodiversity and deep sea sharks. And we got to send these cameras down between 100 and 1,500 meters into completely unexplored ecosystems to capture some of the world's first ever footage from these areas and to observe sharks in the deep in their natural habitat, which was incredibly exciting. On the next slide, you'll see a little bit more around what that looks like. But before we get to that, I want to tell you a little bit more about why we did this project. So in the Maldives, prior to the ban on shark fishing, it was actually very common in some areas to catch deep sea sharks for their liver oil. So sharks have really fatty livers. And the local island communities back in the day used to boil these livers, extract the oil, and use it to waterproof their traditional boats. And it's an incredibly, incredibly good way of waterproofing your boats. This practice slowly phased out with the development of modern and synthetic boat coats and varnishes. And then in 2010, shark fishing was banned. But up until then, we didn't really have any idea around the shark populations beyond the data gathered from fisheries. So all the work we know and all the knowledge we have about these sharks is mostly from dead sharks. So as part of this project, we wanted to bring back some new information and some new data about these sharks alive and in their natural habitat in the deep. Next slide. So here's our team deploying one of the deep sea drop cameras. They're weighted, so they have a little weight attached at the bottom that helps them sink down. And then when it's time to come up, we pre-program them with a release mechanism to drop the weight and return back to the surface. And then we spend a lot of time looking for them on the surface because it's not always easy to see such a small flag in the big blue ocean. And yeah, here's our team deploying a camera as well. Super, super exciting. I'm not allowed yet to share the videos we've gotten, but we captured some amazing videos of sharks underwater. And here you see our team. So most of us are quite young, and most of our team is also local from the Maldives, which we're incredibly proud of. And this was one of our flagship projects last year. If you go to the next slide. So how can you become a shark researcher or a shark conservationist? This is a question I get a lot, so I wanted to answer it for you. So first of all, you don't need to study marine biology if you're not into biology. If you are, definitely go for it. But you don't need to be a biologist or study marine science to work with or work for sharks. There are lots of other ways to also work with these animals. So a few of these ways you'll see on the next slides. Going into engineering and design. So shark research is a field that still needs a lot of input to develop better methods of observing, tagging, and studying sharks. So if you're someone who's creative and who's keen to build and create and develop new things, we need a lot of engineers and designers in the field of shark research and shark conservation. The other way to make a big impact is to go into policy or law or management. So you can become a lawyer and advocate for sharks, which is something we actually need at the moment heavily. The third way, which you've seen also through some amazing scholars from the OWUSS Scholarship as well, is to work in underwater media or work in journalism. So capturing stories from the underwater world to inspire and connect people with these incredible animals. And then the fourth way, and there's a dozen more actually, is to go into the social sciences. So it's to look at how do people and cultures relate to and connect with sharks? What are the social factors that influence how we interact with these animals, or how we protect them, or in some cases, why we don't manage to protect them in some areas of the world. And that being said, we'll hop over to our last slide. And a big thank you to you all for listening. I know I'm a little bit over time, Let's take some questions, or I'll pass back to Jesse.
Talk all day, anytime. That was magnificent. Thank you so much for such a deep dive, literally and figuratively, into your job with sharks. Honestly, if there's a cooler career on planet Earth, I do not know what it is. But yeah, we are going to dive in with questions. First, we're going to have a little bit of fun, test your understanding with a little Kahoot together. So if you're new to Kahoot, sign in with this game pin. The faster you answer, the more points you get, and what you win is Arzucan and I's everlasting respect. So that's worth quite a bit because she's pretty cool. So if you want to chime in with this, fantastic. If you just want to yell out the answers in your class, that's totally fine too. But I am pretty much ready to get us underway. So we're going to get started with this in a minute. And if you want to give us little hints when there's a few seconds to spare for each of these questions, you're welcome to chime in. Once we go to Q&A, we're going to Miss Hurley, Miss Daunt, Mr. Morris, and Miss Johnson's group in that order alongside some of our YouTube friends. But let's see, 3, 2, 1 with our Kahoot. All right, true or false? Sharks have bony skeletons like we do. They're just full of bone, all the bone. No, maybe not. Maybe so. I don't know. Did we talk about this? I think we did at the beginning. Who was paying attention? What do sharks have maybe instead of bone if they don't have bone? Maybe, I don't know. We've got these like wobbly bits all over our face. 30 answers in so far. The answer is false. Most of you got this right. Cartilaginous skeletons. So they're quite different from us. In a weird way, you're more related to a salmon than a salmon is to a shark, which sounds really freaky, but is true. So there you go. Question 1 done. Joyful Gator takes our lead. Ooh, okay. Let's go to question 2. Sharks have been around for how long? And I gave you analogies for this. So is it 10 million years longer than people, 55 million years longer than whales, 150 longer than flowers and plants, or 450 million years, almost twice as long as dinosaurs? I'll give you a hint. If you've ever joined me in a Kahoot before, it's usually the superlative. Maybe the biggest answer. It was exactly, listen to this, yes. So like way before there were dinosaurs, before there were like insects on land, there were sharks. You can find shark fossils that look basically identical to a shark from today. We showed one of those in one of the early slides, and it's like incredible that that's the case. So you guys did great. Rapid Fox takes our lead. Okay, question 3. We got 2 more of these, and then we're doing our Q&A. The Greenland shark is the longest lived vertebrate on Earth. How old can it get? Is it 100 years, 150 years, 200 years, or at least 250 years? Again, we've actually had a lot of old animal programs lately. We've had whales. We had right whales the other day. You're talking about tortoises the other day. It's quite incredible that this is the case. And this is another very deep sea shark. We find these very, very far down. This is a bit of a split thing, at least 250 years. So like sharks are the best. I don't think I'm preaching to the choir with you, I know. But for our kids, like if you weren't convinced at the beginning of this program, you should be by now. All right, what can you do to help sharks? We talked about this explicitly at the end. Tell people about them. Choose sustainable seafood. Use reusable materials and don't create litter. Or all of the above. And maybe more. Maybe more things than that. See, we're nodding. We're giving the answer away. This is your moment to get it right. Fantastic. And thanks to our YouTubers for starting to chime in with questions. That's awesome. Let's see what our podium is. And then we will go to Miss Hurley's class for our first question. All right, our podium. Drum roll, please. This is your first broadcast with us. You get to delve into the bedlam that is the show. Rapid Fox in second. And first, for all the marbles, maybe it'd be a shark name. That would be so nice. Champion Echidna, as far from a shark as you can possibly be. Well, thank you guys for playing along with that. If you are any of those folks, let us know who you are in the chat. But we are going to begin with Miss Hurley for Q&A. Come on in, folks, and take us away. Hi, 6'7". Go ahead.
We live in the inland of Canada. What can we do to help with the conservation of sharks?
Nice. They're nowhere near the ocean. What can they do?
There's lots you can do. One is you can spread awareness about sharks and what they are, and look into sharks in different ecosystems around the world, because most people just think about sharks in tropical destinations. The second thing you can do is to choose sustainable seafood. It's the most important one, which Jesse's already mentioned in the Kahoots. The third one is to reduce your consumption of waste, because a lot of the waste we generate on land does somehow, unfortunately, end up in the ocean. And then the fourth thing you can do is to maybe try and go out there and go to a place where you might be able to see or dive with sharks and become a shark advocate yourself. I didn't grow up by the sea. I came from Germany and Turkey. from landlocked cities, and now I work in shark conservation. So yeah.
I'm going to have to come to the Maldives because it really does look quite spectacular. And I will hit you guys up the moment I show up there at the airport. So that's a great, fantastic answer. Ms. Hurley's class, I'm so glad we got that question. I love highlighting that exact one in every single shark program that we do. Madame Dawn's class, come on in, unmute your mic, and take us away. Hey, guys, Stratford.
Hello. Thanks for having us. I have our first question over here.
I just lost you for a second, Jesse. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yep, you're good. We're good. We're just taking a question.
All right.
How long
Perfect.
university for?
How long did you go to university for? Yeah, perfect. How long was your schooling?
Oops, say again. I can't hear you.
Oh,
Sorry, I
okay.
think it's my internet.
How long did you go to university for? How long were you in school to get this job?
I did a 4-year undergraduate degree and a 1-year master's. And in between, I had a year of internships and work placements. And then the year after my master's, I had the OWSS Rolex scholarship.
So I want to stress, it sounds so daunting. Like, you're in grade 5 or 6 and you go to grade 12. And then the idea of like 5-6 years of school after that, it sounds like, oh my gosh. But at the end of that, you're like 24 and you have the absolute dream job. You get to work in the coolest places in the world with the coolest people in the world. So it sounds a little scary now, but honestly, that is really not that long to end up with a career like the one we got the chance to hear about today. So thank you for that question, guys. I'm going to head to Mr. Morris's class. Ms. Johnson, you're next. YouTubers, you've been asking a few great ones. And then I'm going to show you all a California horn shark as well. So Mr. Morris, also Stratford, welcome in, guys.
Hello. I have a student.
Hi, kids.
Okay.
Hey.
Thank you.
Hey, guys, let's make sure we get the question in, okay? I know we're excited.
Have you ever worked with black-tip reef sharks, and what is your favorite shark?
Ooh.
I haven't worked with black-tip reef sharks, but I have dived with them lots. My favorite shark, it depends on the day. It always changes. I would say at the moment, my favorite shark is either the great hammerhead or the common thresher shark. The great hammerhead just because they're quirky, and common threshers because they are incredibly, incredibly beautiful and they use their tail to hunt. In the Maldives, we have pelagic threshers. In Turkey, we have common threshers, and they're super incredible.
By the way, you're the first person to ever pick either of those sharks as your favorite shark, and I appreciate them so much. Everyone should look up a great hammerhead and a thresher shark when you're done. They're amazing sharks. Also, what an interesting question for black-tip reef sharks. Thank you so much for that. That's so way to go do your research in advance. Miss Johnson's group, come on in. If you want to flick on your mic, I can check in and make sure you're good to go with that. I'll look for your mic. While I'm waiting for that, I'm going to bring up a quick picture of these horn sharks. So they're really cool because they lay eggs as well, which a lot of people don't know that sharks lay eggs. So they're awesome, and they do have these weird, freaky eggs. They're a really beautiful little shark. They look unlike pretty much any shark that you're sort of envisioning in your mind. So there you go, your horn sharks, everybody. Miss Johnson's crew, hi, guys. Welcome in.
Hello. Hi. Hi. Sorry. Well, the rest of the class is here, but we have one student with a question.
Perfect.
Sorry?
Why are sharks so fascinating to learn about?
Ooh. Oh, did you catch that? Just why are sharks so fascinating?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah. Why are sharks so fascinating? What's so fascinating about them to you?
Everything, because they are so diverse, because they come in all shapes and sizes, because they can be found in almost all parts of the world, like almost all oceans. You can have sharks in the Arctic, you can have sharks in tropical reef ecosystems, and because we know very little about them still compared to other marine life. So there's still lots to be explored and lots to be discovered. That is a beautiful answer. We're going to take a few more from our YouTube classes, and then I'm going to head back to our Stratford cruise for a few more to wrap us up. Mr. President's class wants to know, where are most sharks located? Is there like a hub for sharks in the world? Oh, I'm losing you, Jesse. I think it's my internet connection. That's okay. We only got a few more questions anyway, so hopefully this works for a few more minutes. The question was just, is there a place where there's the most sharks in the world? Is there a place with the most biodiversity of sharks? If you caught that, maybe. Wants to work. I heard biodiversity of sharks. I'm assuming the question was, where is the place with the most biodiversity of sharks? Yes. Great. The Galapagos are one of the most biodiverse places in terms of sharks and marine life as well. Southeast Asia Coral Triangle also has a lot of marine biodiversity and lots of different shark species. But top of my head, I would say Galapagos Islands.
Very, very cool. All right, we're going to try and take 3 more questions or so. The Gibson Homeschool crew, what do sharks feel like when you pet them? What do they feel like?
They're very rough. They feel like sandpaper, but you shouldn't ever be petting them. And unless it's an exceptional circumstance, you also shouldn't really be touching them. But if you do happen to accidentally brush against one, they're very, they're very rough because they have these dermal denticles. So their skin is actually lots of little like plate-like spikes, things like armor at microscopic scale. So I know a researcher that actually got what we like to call shark rash or shark burn during one of her research projects on sharks because she was handling a bigger shark species, and it really sort of just grazed past her skin, and it feels a bit like a road rash, like when you fall down while rollerblading.
I encourage our classes, look up a great white shark skin up close, and it looks like lots of little knives facing in one direction. It's really, really weird to see their skin up close. They actually design things based on shark skin, so very, very cool. All right, we're going to try and take a few as the connection's in its last gasp here. Miss Hurley's class, I'm going to head to you guys really quick first. Come on in, and Miss Dawn, I'm coming to you right after. Hey, guys.
Go ahead. What's the biggest shark you've ever seen?
Ooh. The biggest shark you've ever seen. Biggest shark, maybe. Wants to work. It's so close. Oh, dear. Good time for the connection to fail if it had to fail, everybody. If you can catch this, biggest shark you've ever seen. We'll try this one more time. Let's see.
Biggest shark in the world or biggest shark I have seen?
You've seen.
The biggest shark I have seen. The biggest shark I have seen has been a whale shark. It's been a large female whale shark of around, I would say, 12 meters in Indonesia during a dive.
That's such a special thing. It's one of my dream animals to see. It's the largest fish on planet Earth. They're incredible. They're found quite a few of the oceans of the world. So I hope everyone gets the chance to either look up or go see a whale shark in person. Folks, if you have any additional shark questions, please email them to me after. I will get you the answers on anything you want to know. But we're going to wrap up with one more with our connection in its last gasp. Miss Dawn's class, come on in, guys. Hey.
Have you ever seen an albino shark?
Ooh, interesting.
I haven't. But I have seen a leucistic shark. Leucism is sort of a genetic condition in some sharks that results in really patchy skin, and they look very beautiful. But it's not been a full albino, but it's been a shark with a very unique skin pattern. Maybe Jesse can pull up a nice image of this as well.
Yes, I can try and do this really quick for everybody. Let's see. While I'm doing
there
this,
is a report of a white. Oh, sorry. There was a report of a white, like an albino whale shark, I believe close to the Galapagos at some point a few years ago. But I haven't seen it personally.
The pictures here are actually a little sketchy. I'm not sure they quite go with what they're going for. So I'm going to email to you guys a little picture of a leucistic shark when I can find one after the broadcast. And I just want to note, as we're wrapping up in our final few minutes here, please do email us. Our email address is exploringbytheseat or ebtsoyp@gmail.com. I will happily answer more shark questions on behalf of your class. I live for this sort of thing. And I really want to encourage you, if you want to share this program with your family and friends, it's on our YouTube channel. Check out the OWUSS Scholarship on their website. And if you want to check out the whole series, it's right there. 3 more programs to go. Lots to explore and discover. Arzucan, thank you so much for making this work and fitting it all in before the connection started to fail. We really appreciate your time today, and just such a pleasure having you.
No, thank you so much for having me. And it was great to spend some time with you and meet the schools as well. Sorry about my internet. I'm in a small village in Turkey, so this is the best I could do.
It was marvelous. And what we do to end every broadcast is I'm going to bring in all you classes to say a big thank you and farewell. Miss Hurley, Miss Dawn's class, Mr. Morris's class, Miss Johnson's class. Thank you all so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.